Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Burgess Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, issues, challenges, technology, and today a focus on operations, as we've got a guest, Bent Isachsen, who I'll introduce shortly after the news, and we're going to talk through his thoughts on some of the issues and challenges, and perhaps what we need to do in order to combat them. So to kick things off, as always, we've got the news. So Ben, I got a couple of items. So this is hot off the press today. Here we go. So a few hours ago, the Supreme Court kind of rejected the insurers' claims in the High Court there. So upheld the policyholders and insureds' initial decision. And I think I don't think that was a surprise, really.
I think there was some talk, and I think we had some talk previously on one of the panels we did with lawyers who said they were unsure of which way it would go. So I'd sort of not personally, and we've obviously just got the news through. It's pretty fresh and will need to be assessed, but I think it was, it could probably have gone either way, but doesn't matter. It's gone this way. There's going to be a big fallout for the whole industry. I think I was listening to a couple of talks yesterday, which the Insurer TV had put up, Greg Case and Carnegie Brown, talking about issues facing insurance. And I think they both basically said that the insurance industry does have to do, Greg Case said the insurance industry has to do a lot more and has to focus on the clients. And I think I've been batting on about that for a long time. Carnegie Brown said, this was before the announcement today, was that he had a lot of sympathy for clients when the product doesn't work. I think that's what we've been talking about too. Look, we can always talk about the legalities and the intricacies of all these legal arguments on indemnity policies. But look, at the end of the day, this is about whether business can rely on insurance and understand it. And a lot now needs to change, and I suspect will change, but that will all be discussed. But it's I hope we don't get caught up too much in the minutiae, because that's the problem here. I think the industry needs to look forward. It needs to look at the next 5-10 years and say, where are we going to be with climate change, ESG, all those big issues, and simplification of products is part of that, really big part of that. But these things have to happen quickly, and we know the word that's most commonly applied to the insurance industry is how slow it is at change. So we'll be talking about some of this in a minute, but now is a moment that time for action. Yeah,
indeed, couldn't agree more. And yeah, we will talk more with Bent shortly on some of those issues. So last week I spoke about getting a positive COVID test result.
You feeling better?
Luckily, I was actually, as I said last week, I really didn't have many symptoms. I had a slight snuffle, and I wouldn't have put it down to anything else other than a snuffle. But I've just been kind of reflecting.
Is a snuffle like a sniffle? Or is that a new thing? I thought that was what hedgehogs did, snuffle.
Yeah, a snuffle with a sniffle.
I don't know. I can look it up.
But yeah, I was just reflecting on how I felt about it, because we've been ultra cautious in our household, especially over Christmas. We haven't been out at all. The only thing we've done is walk the dog in fields with no one else and stuff. So, and then this week there's been a kind of a push from the government and scientists to communicate kind of, you've got to stay at home, and they've kind of demonized people who are breaking the law. And I kind of felt like I'd let the side down in a way, because the language and the tone that was coming from the media and the government was really around, if you get the virus, you've been irresponsible. You must have done something wrong. And I was just reflecting on kind of how that's made me feel and the environment that's created in a very short amount of time. And then if we think to how that impacts on business, and business culture, Priti Patel, he's one of my least favorite politicians. But then if you think about how organizational cultures are evolve over time, the way that organizations and their leaders use language right now is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And because the normal norms that you get in the office, where checks and balances, and people go, you can't really say that, or that's not how it's done around here, or you should do this and that, are missing. And so language and communication and tone become really, really important. And I just got this from a website, Launchpad, not entirely sure what they do, but it kind of summed it up. Corporate language defines your company culture. And the second line there, the words you choose as a company define how your employees see the enterprise and in turn treat your customers. So I just thought it was just interesting to reflect on how I felt in this wider environment that we find ourselves in. And then
definitely
that plays out in the opens.
And I think going back to the ruling, this is all about language too, and I've always found it interesting as to how companies describe their claims service. You think of two phrases: we only pay fair claims versus we pay fair claims, or we always pay fair claims. Those language is about control ultimately, and the subtext of that language is very important to sort of listen to. And I think those two are very different statements. One, you might argue, is saying that we will do everything we can to avoid paying a claim. The other says we will do everything we can to make sure that you get a claim paid. And we know that in the industry, those are two very different kind of ethoses, which are, if that's a plural of ethos, ethi perhaps, and they matter. They really matter, and they cost money in the end, or they don't cost money. And I think going forward, this isn't just about political correctness and things. It's really about saying what's honest language, what's authentic, what's really telling you what matters. The government at the moment, clearly, I think, is in a bit of a mess over this type of stuff because they've tried to do some things on principle and hoping that people will abide by the rules. And now they've switched quite quickly into a sort of quasi sort of police enforced type of system. But then that falls apart because it's not backed legally. So I think you've got to be extremely clear about how you use language. I agree with you, and I think it's a fault of the industry, actually, communications generally. Bruce Carnegie Brown said, "Is there an education issue?" And I think there is an education issue. But that goes two ways. I think it's got to be that you've got to bring people into what the product is and be part of it, not sort of throw it at them from arm's length via a whole bunch of intermediaries and brokers. But I think that's changing. I think it is changing, and it will accelerate, I think, now.
Great. Right. So with that, talking about bringing people in, let's talk to our guest of the week. So we have Bent Isachsen, who's the company director at BHBI Consulting, formerly of Starstone and QIC, 20 years experience. So while I switch Bent's camera on, I'm also going to play his jingle. So here we go. Guest of the week. There we are. I must do something about those jingles. They're terrible. Hello, Ben.
Good afternoon, it is now.
Yeah, good.
And
how are you? Are you well?
Yes, considering where we are, I suppose I am very well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me as a guest.
That's
to
all right.
you and Ben. I can see you put on your party shirt, Jeremy. Is that because I have turned up as a guest, or is it just because you're trying to be positive in January?
I'm always trying to be positive, no matter what month it is. And so, yeah, I wear this shirt every week to remind people it's Friday and to
He doesn't have an extensive wardrobe, Ben, either.
No, I don't.
Yes, well, I can see my camera is a bit dark, but that's because it is a sunny day out there, and I got a huge window. So apologies for that.
All right,
that's all right.
Fine.
We can see you. We can see you. So Ben, it's great. Thanks very much for coming on. Obviously, you've got tons of experience in operations and under market, and I wanted to talk to you a bit about it. And I think last week we talked about where we are, and I kind of put this idea out that last year was a period of disruption. At the moment, we're in this period of transition as we move into whatever the operation and business model will be towards the end of the year and into 2022. So I just wondered, firstly, do you recognise that as a good way of putting it? And also, what are your reflections on how the industry's coped, especially with work from home, and your kind of perspective, I suppose, of where they are on that digital transformation journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting stage we're in, I think, for the London insurance industry, and I think we can pat ourselves on the back in respect to how we responded last year when we all had to start working from home. But my reflection is what we really did was we were just forced to make a change. And I think my reflection is what we have done in the London insurance market, operating from home, dealing with underwriters and brokers and clients via electronic means is something the Europeans have done for many, many years. I suppose the uniqueness of the London market is that we had a massive marketplace and we all walked in the streets and we all grabbed a coffee and we all met in the underwriting room or in each other offices and we chatted every day. That luxury, in Europe, it's not there. They have been doing this for many, many years. And when I traveled, because part of my role before I started my little consulting firm involved quite a lot of travel, and this was the norm in most offices in Europe. They did meet sometimes with other colleagues and clients, but in general, they sat in their office together. So I suppose we're missing out on that with home office. But they didn't necessarily walk in the street and have coffees with brokers and underwriters on a regular basis. So I think we've done well, but we have a long way to go to really do well, I think.
Yeah, Bent, it's kind of focused us, that comment's interesting because it's kind of focused the market on what the difference is between the sort of basics, isn't it? The brilliant basics, if you like, of things like e-placement and trading and the getting the administration bit right, and what is if you like, a sort of creative ideas type process. And I wonder if that will come through as we go forward a bit more, because those are two very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a golden opportunity if you can look at some sort of silver lining in COVID-19 and what's happened, is that we have transformed by necessity electronic. So we now have this rapid change of a marketplace. If you can envisage COVID-19 would never happened and we were going to do this, we were planning to go electronic, we were planning to have a flexible working arrangements, it would have taken years, 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened. So now we need to grab this golden opportunity where we are transacting electronically, we are communicating electronically, and we are sitting not face to face, we're sitting camera to camera, chatting, and we have just done it. Now we need to take that and we need to optimize it. We need to think about those opportunities that comes with receiving information, business electronically. Most likely, most organization gets that via email. We need to think a bit about how we can optimize that process for the front-end practitioners, i.e. the underwriters. And then we need to think about how does this impact over middle and back office? How can we optimize that process? And then comes a lot of questions around how do you bring a culture in a company remotely, and then you come into people and mental issues. I mean, it's a huge amount of stuff here.
So Ben, I was mentioning just earlier on, I was listening to Greg Case talking yesterday, and as always, he is very interesting and gives you a sort of different perspective. And I think that's his his talent and his capability, and a good thing for the industry too, I think. But he's also very strategic, and I think that when I listened to him, I thought he's trying, obviously for business reasons as well, but he's trying to intensively focus on the big issues and a vision, if you like, a vision for the industry. And obviously you've worked in operations, and I just wonder how much you really think businesses now need to have this vision, because I feel sometimes with things like Blueprint, it's done in the absence of a real vision, and it's done without people really understanding, well, what's the point of me doing all of this? And then it just seems to become an end in itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult sometimes for companies to think, let's say, 2 to 5 years ahead, and create a strategic vision. And I think that's more important than any time in our insurance history, where we have had a rapid change forced, but I would say it has been a good change in respect of the marketplace. Somebody said to me, what is done in, it's done in 2 years, what would have taken 10 years?
Yeah.
Now, if you now don't start sitting down with the senior management team and talking the strategic vision of where you want to be and how you want to capitalize on these changes, you may end up behind in the marketplace. I think the people who now sits back and says, okay, let's come up with a proper strategic approach, and this is our vision for our company, long tail, because I think the era we're in, we won't just slot back into EC3 and back to our rubber stamp and feather pen. That will not happen. So I think it's absolutely critical that you have got written down just a simple timeline of things you want to achieve and how you want to embrace the technology which is out there. Middle and back office, I'm an operations person through and through. So obviously I am not focused on where is the next risk coming from. Yeah. I am focused on how do you deal with that risk.
Do you think that organisations have the maturity to deliver on those two things? So firstly, the leadership within organisations currently to develop that strategic vision, and then the skills and capabilities throughout the organisations from an operations point of view in order to grasp that digital opportunity, as you put it?
Well, Jerry, I think it is a mixed bag, to be honest, out there. I without naming companies and names, I think there is a certain lack of maturity of change, and we know how difficult change is and transformation. I think people are, naturally scared of change and transformation. I think they feel they have so much work to do that they can't sit back and think rationally about how to change. They are just going down day by day on the work they have. And you need somebody in the business to take a step back and look at what's going on. And that's difficult. I do believe that part of the market may not have the maturity of change. They may talk a good game. They may say, we are doing all this and we're becoming a digital insurer, whatever that digital means, their definition. And then when you open up the bonnet and you look inside the organization, you can see they're pedaling really hard in the background to try to come across in the market as a real change and transformation company, but actually they're just pedaling as hard as they can in the background. Can you visualize that, Jerry?
I can.
Can you see it?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I spoke to I worked with a client a few years ago, and we were working on their service proposition and actions that the underwriters could take. And I remember after about 6 months' work, one of the senior underwriters sitting around the table, I showed him something about brokers saying we want to be more customer focused, and he said, "Well, I think that's a bit overrated, really, isn't it?" And my heart sank, and I thought, well, why would you think that? And I think going back to what Greg Case was saying, he said in the end it's not about us, it's about the clients. And I think I just wonder if the kind of reflection on the London market is that a lot of people are so far away still from the customer or ever see the customer that these probably seem like abstract ideas to them. And now we've got a hardening market. They might be thinking, oh, brilliant, that's fine, we can make a bit of money, and the shoe's on the other foot. Let's just go back to where we were 10 years ago.
Yeah, this cycle of soft and hard market, when we now finally manage to get a bit of hardening in the market, what's important here is that, come on, this is not going to last forever. And when there is a hard market, the focus goes, why don't we just write business? Because actually now we are 20 points off of what we had, and the risk there is that you kind of sort of you forget about making operational optimization and invest in the long term and make a scalable organization. Because what's more important is, let's just write this business, let's focus all of our energy in the period we have on the hard market. Now, I'm not going to predict how long that market is going to be hard, but I suspect it won't be for a particularly long time. And then suddenly you find yourself into an expense ratio which is not sustainable. And you now have a golden opportunity right now where the market is a bit hard and you have COVID has happened. There are projects happening in the market. Lloyd's transformation will have an impact on what they do. The PPL platform is being rewritten on a API-friendly way where you can link in. I mean, God forbid, maybe we will end up with straight-through processing. I mean, the Holy Grail, which I don't know how many years we've been talking about, probably, I think I've heard that for over 20 years, the Holy Grail, straight-through processing, and increase the value of people in the market and move them up the value chain instead of doing mundane tasks, doing more controlling tasks and overlooking and controlling the business instead of sitting with your head down in the paper and trying to type it in and merge the Excel spreadsheets and all this stuff, which actually you should just let the technology do. So I think the hardening and the opportunities now for the companies to write more and more business and make it profitable may actually disguise some of those operational initiatives which we may not see of certain companies doing because they just focus on the front end.
So do you think, Bent, that some companies will do that? Because you talked about a mixed bag, and I'll just put my cards on the table. I think some companies will do it because I think there's a competitive opportunity to do it, and that many of them have reflected back certainly to me and us as a consultancy that they should have, as you've explained, make fix the roof while the sun is shining. So the sun is shining now. Do you think some of those will fix the roof, or are you doubtful?
Well, I'm hoping. Having been given the opportunity in my career to start a company, I'm hoping that people will, and I will try to convince people that actually, whilst the sun is shining, why don't you actually look at your infrastructure? Why don't you look at your people and processes and try, whilst you are not pushed to do it, that you choose to do it, that you actually create a vision and a strategy, and that you use the technology which is freely available. I am so lucky that I'm working with Avanade and looking at an insurance accelerator using Microsoft.
Yeah.
Now, most people in the city of the carriers and brokers have already got Microsoft there, and it's a huge opportunity for them to look into what it can do for them at a reasonably time frame and cost.
Mm.
So I am hoping, Ben, but the proof is in the pudding. Let's have a look when the market turns, whenever that is, and what happens in 2021, go into 2022, and cross fingers, we may be able to get back into EC3 in one shape or form. Maybe not 5 days a week, because I think a lot of people would like to have flexibility. There is a better working environment you can operate instead of sitting on a train a couple of hours each day. So I'm hoping, Ben, that some companies, and I know through the grapevine that a few companies are looking at optimizing internal processes and systems and towards the digital transformation. But I also know that some of the maturity of the players is not there, and they need help.
And we're starting to see a little bit of evidence in the London market of where, and perhaps in the SME mid-market, where some technologies are starting to have an impact. So I guess more data will come through, and that will, feed into the boardrooms where they'll start to say, and I think, as you said, some of them are already saying this, but they're only just saying, why? What do we have to do with technology? They'll start to put that, further up the agenda because it is a competitive threat to them, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, a data-driven organization is a very powerful and strong organization. And, I have sat on boards in some of these organizations I worked for, and we are always looking backwards at what has happened. And we have scrambled to get the data together. And what you really should vision is you should see what's happening right now in the organization, and you should also try to predict what's going on. So predictive technology, using up-to-date data, instead of sitting in a board meeting where the data you're looking at is several months old.
Yeah.
And I think that will really create a powerful organization. And we have new upcoming ventures happening right now, which actually may take the path of straight away starting as a digital insurer, harvesting the technology, looking at the Lloyd's transformation, looking at the new PPL platform due to come out later this year, and actually having a huge competitive advantage of some of the players in the market which are not mature enough.
It's interesting. We were talking about Lemonade last week, and then I was talking with someone this week about BritCai, and both of those have achieved quite significant investments quite quickly, and yet perhaps they're still quite unproven as businesses. But it does seem like investors and capital is looking at those businesses too. And I also noticed that Convex as well got another 500 million to take them up to about 3.254 billion or something yesterday in terms of their capital. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, where the money is going as well at the moment?
I think investors are perhaps a bit more mature in respect of their risk assessment. I think they can see that any business which uses technology and are at the forefront of approach and a different approach to what the normal traditional market player is doing is appetizing for them. They probably believe more than what we do in the market about using technology and changing the way we operate, which we have been forced to do, everybody. It's just that some people may pat the back and say, do you know what, we're doing well, we are still operating, and we're done. We've already changed, which is, I think, very far from the truth when you look at some of the organizations out there.
And there you're kind of coming to culture, aren't you, really, which is it a culture of constant improvement and growth and appetite and desire? And that is still a big issue, I think, within insurance.
I think we have always had that issue. I think we will continue having that issue of culture and people. I think it is one of these natural human instincts that are afraid of change because you don't know what it's going to mean to you personally. And it's just a human thing, but knowledge is powerful. So when you start to understand what this transformation may mean to you, and you understand it, you get that knowledge, then you actually may embrace it. But it's that to spend time on something which is new and to get to understand it is always difficult for people.
Yeah, and it's something that I've always, you observe it most, I think, within kind of senior middle management, who are sometimes, the most pressurized people in businesses. It's obviously, I was thinking, oh, it'd be really nice to be Carnegie Brown, because you can kind of paint this broad brush over everything. And 10 years time, this is going to happen, but I won't be around. But it all sounds fantastic, But actually, in middle management, you do have to make things happen, and you're under pressure from both below and above. And I always find that that's the difficult one to kind of make the case to, really. And it, whereas actually senior management does seem to be talking the talk, at least.
Yeah, but I may also think, well, I only need 5-10 years left in this business, and therefore, I'll talk the talk. Yeah. But you guys talking about it's time for action. Well, do it. Whilst you still may only have a few years or 5 or 10 years left in the business, wouldn't it be nice to be part and take action instead of just talking the talk?
Yeah. Matthew Moore at Liberty has a great saying, which is, if you're 5 years in this business, it should be make it the best 5 years of your career. I thought it's a really good saying, actually, as you might as well make the most of it. Yeah, not sure everybody believes that. Sorry, Jeremy.
No, I was just going to pick up the point about the culture and people. That I think if you do start to see organisations embracing digital wholeheartedly, as you paint the picture, Bent, they're going to attract the best people because the best people will gravitate to the organisations that they're using the newest technology, give them the knowledge and the power and the decision making, enable them to make those decisions, and that's how I guess we talk about competitive advantage, but that's how I see a huge element of the opportunity. And I just sometimes, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, on whether a lot of the conversation is actually around cost cutting and optimization, and we can actually do, we've got our traditional processes, and if we can do, 5% faster, we can save this much money, rather than the strategic vision that we've been talking about, and what are the strategic opportunities that are available through this transformation. So I just wondered about that. Do you think that conversation has shifted from the optimization efficiency into more of a strategic play?
So I look at cost savings as a byproduct of creating a better work environment for employees. If you optimize and you use technology for dealing with some of those menial tasks which people do, automatically you become more efficient. You are increasing the happiness of the staff to do slightly more value added tasks in the organization. Automatically you will get a cost saving because you can do more. And I do believe that the people working in the organization, when they understand they can do a better job quicker, they will get more satisfaction. And I think being in an organization, if you feel job satisfaction is one of the key components for a good company and bringing that culture together. And that's what I believe, Jerry. I have been in various organizations. I think the culture and people is a really, really difficult topic to get right. I think with COVID, it's even harder because we all sit in different environments. You don't meet at the coffee machine. You don't feel that, what shall I say, collaboration with people face to face. We lose a lot talking to a camera instead of talking to each other. There is a lot of things which you can't see from the three of us. It would have been so much more powerful to sit around a round table and have this conversation. And you can just imagine the magnitude of that is vast in a market where people are, some people maybe scramble over a kitchen bench. We all have, huge amount of different environments we're working in. And I think if you work together, and we have had about 12 months of this, give or take, we are getting better at talking to a camera. But I think there is a massive impact on staff at the moment, operating in a digital world, but actually not using huge amount of technology. It's just been shifted to home. And if we can swap that around and say, do you know what, your day is now going to look slightly different. You're going to increase on the value chain. You're going to control the business coming in instead of having to filter through your emails of, hundreds of emails a day. Instead of doing a data input, you're just going to be a controller to make sure that the machine has put it in correctly for you. It will be, people will start smiling and say, do you know what, I get that. I will embrace that. Transforming these people, transforming companies, and it needs some real strong, mature leadership, vision and strategy to put that in place.
Cool. Great. Well, I think we could talk about this forever, couldn't we? But I think we're rapidly running out of time. So I'm going to say thanks very much, Bent, for sharing those thoughts and time. And perhaps we'll invite you back in a few weeks' time as whatever pans out over the coming weeks and months, and get your thoughts again. But thank you very much for coming on. Thanks, Ben.
It's excellent. Really good. Yeah. I think I'm going to have an anxiety attack when I do my first meeting with real people.
Yeah.
Jeremy and Ben, thank you ever so much for being invited, and I wish you all the best for the weekend.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Ben.
Bye.
Thank you.
It was great, wasn't it? It's always really interesting to hear, those perspectives from people that have been deep in the industry for so long, and it's refreshing that we're talking at this strategic level, and it isn't just about ticking some numbers or hitting a target on a box. It's people are thinking a bit more holistically.
I agree. I think the investment point now, and looking at businesses that will invest, I wonder. I mean, I think Bent's point, that the investors are probably more savvy now, and they will be pushing towards digital anyway as a big push, and that will. I think that'll make a difference to the boardrooms, as to how they think and what they do. And if they don't, then I think they're behind the curve. So there's a lot of good things in favour at the moment, I think, of the industry.
Yeah, good, excellent. Right, doing anything this weekend, Ben? I'll start because I am out of my quarantine as of midnight tonight. So I'm actually going to go outside for the first time. Perhaps get my bike out, get the rust off it. And
yeah, I think I'm going to get my bike out and go for a ride. I haven't been out for a while. I think I'd lost the will a bit in early January, and I really do need to get out a bit more. And all this talk that all these people do at this time of year about diets and work, now it's all workouts at home, isn't it? And January and dry January and everything else. So yes, I do feel the moral pressure to get out there, but I probably will just end up trudging around a local field as I have done for most of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that trudging.
Yeah, it's like the world feels a bit like that, doesn't it?
Okay. All right, good. All right, thanks ever so much, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, have a great weekend all. Bye.
Burgess & Bolton's Weekly Wrap-Up.